suffering a massive defeat at the 2025 general and regional elections. A partnership for national unity is entering uncharted territory. The party has turned to businessman Dr. Terrence Campbell, widely known for building one of Guyana's largest food networks, to lead its team in Parliament. Campbell's appointment represents a dramatic shift from traditional political leadership to private sector-driven vision. Supporters see him as a fresh face who can inject new energy, restore credibility, and reconnect with disillusioned voters. Critics, however, question whether his business acumen will translate into effective political leadership. This week on Sources, Dr. Campbell tells us about his plans to rebuild APNU and the vision he hopes to bring to Parliament. Welcome to Sources. I'm your host, Svetlana Marshall. Tonight, we'll be speaking with the parliamentary leader of a Partnership for National Unity, Dr. Terrence Campbell. Dr. Campbell, welcome to Sources.
Thank you, Svetlana. It's my pleasure to be on Sources with you.
How are you, sir?
Well, since I'm on Sources, I'm hoping you have a lot to share with me.
Well, you'll be sharing a lot with me and with our viewers.
I thought it was the reverse.
Dr. Campbell, you're known as a businessman. You have several businesses spread across Guyana. How did you get into politics?
I guess from public advocacy, basically in business. For most of my business career, I kept my head below water. I've always had an interest and concerns about matters in the political domain, but I avoided, speaking out publicly until around, I would say, about 2015, 2016. I mean, I would support political parties, well, not even political parties, I'd support one party, financially and so on. I would engage with the members of that party.
That's the PNCR?
The PNCR, and I would share, and then when the AFC came along, I would also engage with them and did a lot to encourage them to form a coalition back in 2011. Well, I was hoping they would form a coalition in 2011, and they didn't, and then they formed it in 2015. So basically I kept my head below, water, out of line of the radar and so on. And then in 2016 I got a little concerned about the direction that we were heading and began to speak publicly, and that continued until, well, it's continued up to now, really. But in, I think, Mr. Norton's placing me on the investment committee of the Natural Resource Fund, that then led to a clash with Barra Jagdeo, Dr. Ashley Singh, and the president last year, late last year. I think that dragged me into the political domain.
You found yourself on the APNU list of candidates, and now you're going to head into Parliament as the leader for APNU in the National Assembly. Now, the party has not only failed to unseat the PPPC, it has lost its status as the main opposition. And so you're coming into this parliamentary arena as the leader. How do you plan to, maneuver the challenges that are likely to face the APNU at its lowest point?
Right. So politicians would tell you that business is not politics, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of disagree. I see similarities between business, politics, and military strategy, the army. For each one of them, it's a question of you're going to be successful if you have the right strategy. You can turn around a bad situation if you have the right strategy. You can take over, many people have taken over companies that are failing, identify the key issues. It might be a product issue, it might be a marketing issue, it might be an HR issue. You identify the key issues, what went wrong, what we need to do to correct it, and then you execute. This is how, forgive me if, the politicians would say, they might grunt at my saying this, but this is how I see the APNU now. It is a party, the main party is the PNCR. That's a party that has been around for decades in Guyana, has strong roots, and it's a question of identifying what went wrong that caused us to lose a lot of votes to win, and a lot of people who did not turn out to vote. Identify those two things. Why didn't people come out? What caused people to go to win? And see how we reverse those trends. And I think, and then executing. There's some people who are good at identifying the problem. There's some people who are not so good at the execution of the plan to correct, I think I got a little bit of both in me. Not much, just a little bit. But I think that little bit is what I intend to deploy in terms of identifying what the problems are and then reversing course to take the ANU. And, some people get upset, but to take the APNU back to power.
So in accepting this appointment as leader of APNU in Parliament, I'm assuming that you've done your analysis, and what would you say are those primary issues that must be addressed? How?
It wouldn't be correct to say that I have done the analysis. It would be correct to say that I have an idea of a number of the reasons, but let's just take some numbers that are in the public domain. No secret here. APNU had close to 80,000 votes in 2025, and we had close to 220,000 votes in 2020, or thereabout, right? The difference is 140,000. With population growth, what we should have been, the votes that we should have attracted would be even more than 140,000. So, it would be foolish for me, with the training that I've had academically, to think that I can sit down either here or in a small group and determine all of the reasons for the underperformance, and to determine, to prioritize. So even if you have those reasons, you must prioritize which are the important ones, which are the ones that matter most. And we're talking about 140,000 plus people. So you can only ascertain those reasons and prioritize them through a structured study of what went wrong. That has not been done as yet. That's in the process. We're in the process of addressing that. And so I don't have the answers. I know some of the reasons. I know some of the things that went wrong. But I prefer a more structured diagnostic process. Mm-hmm. And then that way, in the computer guys used to say garbage in, garbage out. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to, use garbage to make decisions. But mind you, I don't want to sound like the political leader here. But as the parliamentary leader, I have a role in supporting the political leader of the APNU in getting this done.
Now let's talk about that. You're not a member of the PNCR.
Not as yet.
Aspire, though? You said not as yet.
Not as yet.
Do you? I'm thinking that you're heading in that direction.
I will join the PNCR.
Do you see yourself as becoming one day the lead of the PNCR to really have the partnership, which the PNC forms a major part of, and the PNC controls a lot of things, what happens in the APNU? Do you see yourself becoming, in the future, leader of the PNCR to really chart the course that you want to have charted?
Generally, I like to look way down the road, all right? And but at this time, with the challenges that are facing the APNU. We in the APNU, we have the challenge of not being the main opposition party, and that has a number of different challenges. It comes with a number of different challenges. So that's one. We have the challenge of restoring morale amongst the troops. We have the challenge of facing local government election that's probably going to happen in less than 1 year. So I want you to think of me and those in the leadership, with leadership roles in the APNU, as busy digging a trench and fighting from inside. That it's hard at this point to look down the road and think about political leadership in 2030. The APNU has a number of young people, a number of and even older players with much more political experience than myself, who I think are quite capable of leading the party. But I would always say that if I'm asked to take leadership in any situation to which I am personally committed, I will never back down. I will never relent. I will accept the challenge. So if it comes to the point as we approach 2030 and I'm asked to take political leadership, I think I won't refuse. I'm prepared to do that.
Now, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Norton, in appointing you, made it clear that he remains the leader of the PNCR. Do you see this dual arrangement as a challenge, and do you worry that it could limit your ability to lead the APNU effectively in Parliament?
No, I don't see it as a challenge. I have, starting with my appointment to the Investment Committee of the Natural Resource Fund, I think that Mr. Norton has always given me latitude to take decisions, but he has been a politician for 50-something years, 50-plus years. He's been in Parliament before. He's been leader of the opposition. I think it would be unwise for me not to lean on his experience, not to consult with him. So it's actually an advantage of having a political mentor, having your back and being willing to support you and give you advice as you traverse new and uncharted, at least for me, terrain. So I don't think that's a problem.
Earlier I mentioned that you're coming at a time when the party is at its lowest. And in that it not only addresses the issue of the votes and the party's performance at the September 1 elections, but we've seen even after those elections a number of resignations. Recently, the chairman of the PNCR resigned from office, as well as long-standing member of the PNCR, Mr. Marvin Williams, also resigned. How do you intend to, because like I said, the PNC forms a major part of the APNU. How do you work from where you are as a parliamentary leader to help build some sort of a cohesive environment for the party to reposition itself, to rise from this defeat?
So let me say that I know Mr. Holder and I know Mr. Williams. He actually resigned.
How is that?
After an interview.
You were there? I was wondering.
Yeah,
were you seated right there?
I was sitting right there, just the same where we are right now.
Oh my.
Right. So I know Mr. Williams, I know Mr. Holder, and I know Mr. Mason to a lesser degree. You know, whether it be business or a political party, after the kind of result that we experienced on September 1st, people will leave. It's just a natural part of the process. You know, I have spent sometimes in the trenches with the party comrades. And I've met comrades who have not had a proper job for 5 years, simply because they have been party comrades. They have been shut out from private sector jobs, shut out from political jobs. And now with the party facing what is likely another 5 years out of power, there are some people going to leave. They're going to leave for all kinds of reasons. You know, some of them will probably just leave because they're associated with the party, and that limits their ability to get jobs. So, you know, 3 comrades have left. I think others may leave. I don't know. But the party has to be rebuilt. And, you know, the party is not about a single person. At the end of the day, as bad as it was, almost 80,000 people voted for the party. And so the party is not going to die with these departures. The party is not going to die. Even if Mr. Norton left tomorrow, it wouldn't die. And it certainly would not die. It would hardly move the needle if Terrence Campbell left. People will leave, and, you know, what the party has to do is work on its rejuvenation.
But how do you do that? How do you stop the bleeding from happening? How do you help to restore that level of confidence in the coalition? And I'm going to say coalition because it's a combination of parties, and the type of confidence that we saw in 2015.
So you identify what went wrong, and you start taking steps to correct it. And even though that process is not complete, if you follow my page or follow the news, you would have seen myself, and in particular MP designate Saiku Andrews and others. We have been going out. We have been trying to help in some tragic circumstances. We will be going out. We will be meeting with people. We'll be thanking them for supporting us. And if they didn't support us, we will find out why they didn't support us. We will engage with our communities. You're going to see a lot of that. It's going to be different. And I think on Nation Watch I mentioned that MPs will have to act as, it's not just about being in Parliament, but MPs have a role in our communities, to work in those communities. And some of that has been missing. And we're going to do that work. And I think once you start to do that work, people pay attention, and you start to rebuild support.
Okay, I want to hear more about that, but before we do...
I can't tell you everything. The PPP is listening.
Before we do, though, it is believed that you're given, and I'm referencing to the state of the APNU, I'm referencing to the state of the PNCR. It is believed that you are being given a basket to fetch water. And I want to quote what not doctor, but a political analyst, GHK Lal, wrote just recently. He said that you've been given a basket to fetch water to bathe unruly ducks with poor quality water, a basket that could run a sane man into a basket case. How do you respond to that criticism, and how do you believe that you could prove the skeptics wrong?
First of all, I disagree with you that GHK does a criticism.
No, it's not. Yeah.
I think he's merely
describing the situation.
His description of the situation. I think it's the issue is leadership in a case like this. Again, and I probably said it about 2-3 times before. Identify what's wrong. In this case, the leader must, whoever is the leader or leaders, must roll up their sleeves. Start to do the work. When you start to do the work, the unruly ducks, you gotta crack a whip sometime and say, well, hey, things have changed. But those unruly ducks, once they realize, once they see the discipline come to the organization, they see the work being done, right? They will fall in line. I'm not overly worried about that issue. I'm not worried. Now, it is the political domain. It is a little
That's what I'm
different.
going to press you, because
No,
you keep
it is-
saying, you mentioned this 3 times.
Yeah.
And you spoke about doing a review in a sense and identifying the issues,
Right.
but you must know preliminarily
Right.
what are some of those issues, and that's what I want to get from you. What are some of the issues you must have seen things gone wrong? What must be done as a starter to really bring everybody in line?
To
restore that confidence.
I came here to get information from you, and now you're dragging information.
Yeah,
out of
because
it.
you mentioned it and you said, I said this 3 times. We need to identify what
No,
the
but
problem
I
is.
gave you one. I said MPs for one, and have not. If you look at the APNU AFC list of member parliaments in the 12th parliament, there are names there that I don't know. Now, I wasn't steeped in politics, but I've been in Guyana, pay attention to things that are happening in Guyana, and I don't know them. And if I don't know them, it means I haven't been doing the work. So that's one area that they haven't been done, that needs to be corrected. Another area, I think, is that politics, and I'm not going to give you all, I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to feed you something because, you're hungry and you don't want to leave me alone.
No, I want to leave you alone.
I'll say this, and some people took umbrage at Mr. Norton speaking about money and politics,
Yeah.
but it's a reality. The PPP has used state resources, right? Contracts. I visited my home village on the Essequibo coast, and I saw so many small roads being built, roads this wide, We could barely walk down the road. I mean, I don't even know if a vehicle could drive on that road without one wheel being off the road. But, so you had the PPP, using state resources. You had WIN. This is not a secret. WIN had a lot of support because its leader has been out in the public domain, philanthropy, a lot of philanthropic work, and so that's not something the honest and poor APNU has been doing, right? I mean, and it's something that has to change, and it requires a different mindset. I mean, I have donated millions upon millions of dollars over the years, but I will never raise my hand because my personal Christian background says that you do not need to say that you do good works because God knows. But politics is different.
I was just about to ask.
Politics is different, and I don't think this is something that we now have. The PNCR used to have a social welfare department that would react whenever there was a crisis and provide help. And we haven't seen that in recent times. So you're going to see a party, the PNCR and the APNU, out in your communities, engaging with you. You're going to see a party, the PNCR and its coalition, the APNU, out providing assistance to the degree that we're able to do so. And so these are some of the things that we will be doing in order to change where we are now. And even initial efforts have resulted in some increased engagement. And I think that people in politics, everybody, what I've come to learn in the political domain, everybody has an opinion, right? But results speak the best and speak the most. So once they start to see those results, and then we have an early test in local government election, I think people will get on board. They will get on board, but the work has to be done. Now, I cannot, it'll be foolish of me to tell you every single thing that we're going to be doing. Because when I was on on Marvin's program. By the time I came off, I got a call from a high PPP official, right? They're paying attention. So I'm not going to reveal every single thing that we're going to be doing. I'm just giving you two, which if you look at what's going on, it's obvious. We have got, despite limited resources, we've got to be out there. We've got to show people we can help them. Because what we must do for the next 5 years is identify ourselves as a government in waiting. That if the PNCR and the APNU are out of power and they're able to help, they show that they truly care. They truly care about us and they are able to help. Then we should give them a chance to see what they will do once they're in power.
Now, with just 12 seats, how do you intend to hold the government accountable? Because I guess the voters would want to see that the government is held accountable. And how do you ensure that the APNU remains relevant?
So the APNU is part of the opposition. And this will call for work with the main opposition party, which will win. It will call for cooperation on issues of national development and foreign policy with the government. I think you're going to see, so there's a two-part answer to this question. I think what you're going to see is MPs who are well prepared for the task at hand, right? Preparation is going to be key. They're going to be informed. They're going to be well researched in their delivery. That's going to be demonstrated. So that's one way. The second way is being an MP gives you a platform. Let me give you a simple example. If I had written even a letter to the press expressing concerns about the depletion of the Natural Resource Fund, simply as Terrence Campbell, nobody would pay me any mind. It will pass. A couple of people on the Starbuck News will argue in the comment section. Kaito News doesn't have a comment section, and it will disappear. The fact that I was a member of the investment committee of the Natural Resource Fund gave me a certain standing now to speak to the issue and to attract attention. Members of Parliament, by virtue of being members of Parliament, have that standing, and they must now use that to push the government, right? So if we are not getting traction on our legislative agenda within the House, then we will come to the public and we will explain to the public what is it we're trying to get done. Why is it that we're trying to get it done? Why is it, how does it benefit them? So the fight, so to speak, to contribute to national development and to moving Guyana forward, it will take place in and out of Parliament. And I disagree. 12 MPs working together and pulling together towards a common objective, especially if we are joined by the main opposition, whether or not we are joined by the main...
And there's also Forward Guyana movement.
For Forward Guyana too. But whether or not we're joined by the main opposition and Forward Guyana, but I hope we all come to a consensus on matters of national importance. I think it's a fighting, the 12 are a fighting force. And as I said on Marvin, and I should separate church and state, but sometimes it's hard. You know, I'm a Christian, and Jesus left 12 who changed the world. The 12 who are going to the Parliament of Guyana are going to change Guyana.
What are some of the primary issues? You mentioned that there are issues that, you know, the opposition as a collective should work together on. And what are some of the issues you intend to press government on to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do in these 5 years?
I'll give you, again, I don't want to go into our full legislative agenda at this point. But let me just give you one quick issue, because as I leave here, I'm going to meet the Carter Center. And we're going to talk about elections. We're going to talk about electoral reform. In electoral reform, we're going to talk about stuff, I'm sure we'll address things like biometrics, access to media, campaign financing, and so on. I think electoral reform is an important issue on which the entire opposition should come together. I think foreign policy is an issue on which the entire opposition and the government, especially in relation to the threat from Venezuela, we have seen, even though we didn't have anything to say recently, it has been the Trinidad Prime Minister who has been applauding the destruction of vessels at sea. I don't recall our president or prime minister saying anything.
He spoke about it recently. He was questioned on it during our recent press conference.
But did he support it? Did he say that he agree with it?
Well, he said his concern remains the issue of trafficking of narcotics and illegal weapons and so forth.
But the Trinidadian prime minister came out and said, I support this, you know, in a different way. But nevertheless, the Venezuelan defense minister did issue a threat that, listen, if anything happens from any of your territories, Trinidad or Guyana, we're going to respond, right? I think we have a peculiar situation with Venezuela that's gone on for too long. I am skeptical based on information I have received from diplomatic sources outside of Guyana and from my own assessment that even a ruling from the International Court of Justice in our favor, I do not believe. Well, Venezuela has already said they don't recognize the jurisdiction of the court. So a ruling in our favor will not bring the situation to an end. So that's one area where the entire assembly should come together and work and cooperate in terms of foreign policy. There's a foreign policy committee of the
deals with foreign relations.
Right, foreign relations committee that has not been sitting. The president, after the Venezuelan naval vessel passed through our waters, had promised either the president or the vice president, someone or the prime minister, one of them, but I think it came from the president, promised to revive that committee. It was not done. So these are some of the areas for cooperation that I think I gave you one for the opposition and one nationally, where we're hoping to see that we'll put aside the issue of competition, political competition, and work in the national interest.
Since you brought up the issue of the strike actions by the U.S. on those vessels in international waters, as said by the U.S. President Donald Trump, that are reportedly and allegedly linked to drug cartels, what would be your position as the parliamentary leader? I know the 13th Parliament is yet to be convened, but since you've already been shown into the position, what would be the APNU position? Have the APNU discussed it as yet?
So, thanks for framing the question that way. The APNU does have a foreign policy specialist, and I'm sure they're reviewing their situation, and at the appropriate time they will issue a comment on it. Okay.
Now, you mentioned the Natural Resource Fund Investment Committee, on which you sat on during the last
well, I still sit. But
you're still sitting. It's still
I
active.
still sit, but I will resign perhaps before Parliament is convened.
Okay. Now, you've challenged government's management and transparency of the fund in court. Where's the case at this point? And
the case is slated for decision on October 6th.
Mm-hmm. How important was it for you to challenge?
I think it's absolutely important, and I want to say clearly it's a costly exercise that I undertook from personal funds, and that even if and I don't think this I intend to pursue it until I get a result that I'm happy with, unless something else changes. I'm not allowed to speak on the case itself, but I will say this, which I don't think is speaking on the case. I do believe that it was the intention of the legislature and those who put in place the law that the citizens of Guyana should know how their money is being spent. And we do not have direct accountability for how a single cent of oil money is spent. And the answer is that we put it in the consolidated fund, and the consolidated fund is audited. And I invite you, Svetlana, to look at the case of Ghana, and you will see that Ghana does have an oil fund, and that the monies are placed into their consolidated fund. But notwithstanding the fact that it goes into that consolidated fund, that every year, I can send it from my phone to you, to your phone in a second. Every year, they account for every single cent of oil money that has been spent. And I think that is where Guyana needs to go. I think that's what the people of Guyana deserve, to know exactly how our oil money is being spent.
And you don't believe that is happening? I know during the consideration of the budget estimates, they would go line item by line item. The opposition is given an opportunity to grill the government on some of the projects. For example, there's the gas to energy project ongoing, the new river bridge across the Demerara River. The opposition would get, don't you think that's sufficient?
No, I don't think it's sufficient. I think we need, the idea was that the fear back in 2015 when we discovered oil is that we would end up like maybe Nigeria or Venezuela or Angola. I'm not sure how Angola is doing these days, where all of the oil money will be spent out without proper accountability. And the reason we set up a sovereign wealth fund, as far as I know, threefold. One, to support what we want to do here locally. Two, to have money for difficult times. Three, to leave some money for future generations. As it is, we're not doing any of that. We're not really leaving anything. We're not really saving anything for difficult times, for any economic shocks. Nor are we leaving anything at this point for future generations. We're spending it virtually all out. And if we spend it all out, the people of Guyana have a right to know exactly where this oil money is being spent. Let me say this to you. We have one Guyana concerts and Marshall come and we jump up and we dance. Where did that money come from? Is it the oil money that we're spending out? Or is it that we're doing so well with taxation revenue that we could afford to do it? Because we know that the government supports all of this. When Vibes Cartel came, and it's not limited to that, right? When we built the Diamond to Craig Road that was done badly, was it all money that we wasted, or was it tax revenues we spent? I think people need to know, because the idea was that we were going to use this oil money, this lottery, this inheritance, this thing that came out of nowhere, really. We're going to use it wisely. So I disagree vehemently that when you throw it into this pot and you just tell me, oh, this is how we spend from the pot, that is what is acceptable. I want to know what you're doing with the oil money, because that is not, oil is not a renewable resource. One day it's going to be all gone. So I want to know how you're dealing with that. The rest is probably renewable out there that you're throwing into consolidate, or large parts of it might be. But the oil money, it's not. So I want to know how you're spending it.
With you resigning from the committee, is it that the opposition would now have to assign somebody else to the committee to ensure that they keep watch and they ensure that the government does what it's supposed to do? And from the parliamentary benches, how do you ensure that if this case doesn't go in your favor, how do you ensure that the government is held accountable, that the resources are effectively managed and they reach the people on the ground? Because there's the issue of the cost of living, and people worry about access to resources. I saw an article recently, it's 10 years now, and people feel that they're not benefiting enough from the oil resources.
So you asked me a couple of questions. So yes, when I resigned, because I think it's incompatible with being an MP and the demands, and especially leader of the parliamentary delegation, and being on the investment committee of the Natural Resource Fund, which I previously described as a white elephant. So it wouldn't be a good use of my time. The opposition will have to put somebody else there. But let me first say that the current operations, I said it before and I'll describe it again, it's a white elephant. Basically, it's rubber stamping whatever the government decides to do. All that the board essentially does is receive a request from the government for money, approve the request, and the government spends it. At this point, that's all that they do, right? Now, but yes, the opposition will have to replace that person, and the opposition. Let me take a sidebar here now. The opposition should have a representative on the board itself, and not just on the investment committee, right? So that's one. And the sidebar diversion that I'm taking here is, I would like to see, coming out of this 13th Parliament, I want to engage the government for opposition representatives on key state agencies. And I was on Globespan last night, and I pointed out to Mr. Jonas that he did say procurement, but it kind of fell in the middle. The first place I want to see an opposition representative is the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board. Right?
Why?
Because I believe that if we remember briefly the Critic contract, the Bellevue contract, by the time the PPC, the Public Procurement Commission, dealt with it, they said, yeah, they had a number of problems with it, but we can't do anything. I think having, and for want of a better example, having a Terrence Campbell who's not afraid to speak out and not to say, this shall not pass, this is being done wrong, this does not meet the smell test. On the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board, just having such a person, I think we will see less of the critic type contracts that are there. And there are others who feel that Mr. Jonas always throws up Guy Oil and GPL and so on. I believe that, and I don't disagree with him, but for me, the number one priority is NPTAP, to have an opposition representative there. An opposition representative should be on the NRF board. Coming back to the other part of your question, which is, as a parliamentarian, I intend to scrutinize, and let me mention this one more point before I come to that. The LCDS funds, and I previously addressed this in the newspapers, the government reports on how they spend it. Because the Norwegians said, we want to know how you're spending it. But the government has disrespected the people of Guyana. Because the people of Guyana want to know how you're spending the oil money, but they will not report on it in the budget. They will not say, well, this is where the oil money is going. But they say where the LCDS funds are going. I intend to use my position as a member of parliament to scrutinize the budget and to call out wherever I see excesses and to ask questions in terms of oil money and how it's been spent and so on. But it's not limited to oil money. It will be straight across everything in the budget.
What would be your vision for the country's security sector? Because oftentimes we talk about cost of living, but security is also a major issue.
When you say security, I mean, you
we
mean
talk
crime and security.
crime and security. How do you intend to press government to ensure that, one, the crime rate, and I know I spoke to the minister recently and she said, you know what, serious crime has been on a decline. It has reduced by 26%, but there still remains the concern. So from the opposition benches, how do you ensure that, one, you mentioned about holding the government accountable at the level of the various committees and ensuring that Guyanese know how the resources, financial resources coming from the oil industry and all the other industries are spent, but how do you ensure that people live to see and to benefit?
So first of all, I think, as with anything, there's no single reason for crime in any place, right? But I do believe, to the extent that we reduce the cost of living pressures on our citizens, now we will see a decline in crime and in serious crime. Forgive me, but I do not take any statistics coming from this PPP government. I question every single statistic, because if you listen to their statistics on inflation and the cost of living in Guyana, it has nothing, it does not relate to what I experience when I go out, when I go to the market, and so on. I mean, the two biggest drivers, and this is just a sidebar, just to show why I'm undermining the statistic of 26%. The two biggest drivers are the cost of food, and I think the cost of housing in Guyana. Yeah. Right? And those have escalated dramatically. We were in All Boys Town. There was a fire, and I was back in All Boys Town with the leader, I think about 2 days ago. And I met those people, and they're telling me that a one-bedroom in All Boys Town is $65,000 to rent. This probably would have been, I don't know, 10, 12,000 a couple of years ago. So we know that the cost of housing has escalated dramatically. You know, I don't have to sell this to you, that the cost of foodstuff, the cost of vegetables, the cost of fruit, everything has escalated dramatically, and yet we hear 3 and 4% inflation. It is in that light that I don't listen to the government when they tell me serious crime is down. However, we need to press them, and I think the issue, we have politicized the police force. Appointments are based on their patronage appointments. You know, these are the people who serve us as political masters. They're willing to do anything that we want them to do. And these are the people who we're going to promote to superintendent, senior superintendent, or we're going to jump them to assistant commissioner, and so on. The police force needs to go back to being a meritocracy. That is very important. We need to remove this, in my mind, and don't take this as an APNU position, but I've said this before. When we have a vacancy, I would like to see, this is personal, this is not an APNU position. I would like to see that when there's a vacancy, especially for the police commissioner, it's not the only such appointment, that it actually be brought to Parliament, and not the president sitting in the corner somewhere and claiming that he's consulting with the leader of the opposition on the matter, and then, you know, somebody is appointed. And especially now that the APNU doesn't hold the largest grouping in the opposition ranks. I said this before. I'm not jumping on this bandwagon now that we're in this position. This has been a long held position, but it requires increased urgency for us now, considering our current position. I would like to see that the appointments be brought to Parliament, and that the nominee or nominees for the position be grilled publicly about the state of crime and so on in our country, their plans for addressing it, and then maybe within a committee hearing. It doesn't have to be the full Parliament, maybe within a committee hearing. And then a recommendation is made. I think it's far too important. The police force has been degraded now for decades, and this is the reason that we have these problems. I do not know who the minister is listening to, but I can tell you almost weekly, I hear stories from people who tell me about the ineffectiveness of the police force, that they had a burglary, that somebody assaulted them, that, that a policeman harassed them on the road, and so on. So many stories, and that a complaint is made, and nothing is done about it. So, if we can fix those things, if we can fix cost of living, fix crime and security, Ghana becomes a better place. As it is, in the current approach to the management of the police force and the appointment of the hierarchy, we'll never get there. And that needs to change.
Dr. Campbell, as we wrap up, what would success look like for you in this role 1 year from now? And what would you need to achieve to say, you've made a difference?
Success for me 1 year from now is first advancing the legislative agenda that we are putting together. Second is working with the other members of the opposition, Forward Guyana and WIN and the government, to bring relief to the people of Guyana who are suffering. 50% of them are in poverty. And being in the political domain, I've come across many of them, and I've seen their situations, their housing situations. I've listened to their stories of there's real poverty in this country. So that's the second area of, if we're able to address those two, that would be the second area of success. A third area of success would be for the members of Parliament to take on the role both in and out of Parliament, and primarily out of Parliament now, in terms of engaging with their communities in such a way that the APNU emerges victorious in the local government election, which may occur in less than 1 year. I think those are three.
Do you have your eyes set on our local government elections, and would be measuring the...
It will be. I come from business, and we have a way of saying, what you measure, you improve. And local government election will be the first real hard measure of whether we have turned the tide for the APNU.
Dr. Campbell, thank you so much for sitting with me on Sources. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Svetlana, and I didn't get anything out of you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Sources. I've been your host, Svetlana Marshall.